Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Kristen Schmidt, and we'd like to welcome you today to the Shifting Tides webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to jump right in because we know that content is king as we talk in the industry. And so we'd really like to jump in, introduce our panelists, and dive into meeting process, workflows, efficiency tools, and planning processes. So I'd like to welcome today Corey, who is the CEO of Mobile Assistant, Tony, who is the COO of Advicent and Nevaplan, and Brian McLaughlin, who is the CEO of Redtail CRM. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, Kristen.
All right, so just a couple of webinar etiquette. Obviously, everybody's been doing webinars for a while because we're hopefully going to be in person very, very soon. But until then, let's just let everybody know who's watching and listening today that there is an open comment chat box, so feel free to put any questions in there. I would like to treat this as an open round table as long as everybody's cool with it. I'd like to have it as an open conversation. Jump in whenever. You don't have to wait for me to point a question at you. We want to bring the most value to our listeners today. But also, if we see any questions come through, we'll address them right away so that they're topical, and we won't wait till all the way at the end to do a traditional Q&A if that's okay. So with that, let's kick this off. Corey, I'd like to start with you. Mobile Assistant has done some really amazing efficiency builders within the technology tool and teaming up with Redtail to bring it to life. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, thanks for the intro, and excited to be here with my friends Tony and Brian. We're gonna have some fun today, guys. This is nothing I like better than not only talking about Mobile Assistant, but I love talking about our Redtail integration. We were just online with our sales director, we were kidding around that I feel like we talk about Redtail more than we talk about Mobile Assistant sometimes on our demos. But that's just because of the power of the integration. And so, what you're referencing there, Kristen, we wanted to come up with a different way for advisors to think about how they could use dictation in their practice. Instead of the traditional, you get out of a client meeting, you hit record, and you try to remember everything and try to keep yourself structured, keep yourself on track and formatted so that the information that you're capturing is valuable. We introduced a new innovation called the Assistant, which is a template-driven feature that's built into our Talk It Mobile app. What you're looking at on the screen right now is what that Assistant template feature looks like. It's very simple. We basically have given the power of scripts to the advisors. So instead of just having a free-form dictation method or way of capturing the information, now you can have different templates that help you to structure your thoughts and your ideas so that when you get that information dictated, it's going to be in that order so that when you get the notes back and for instance, once they go into Redtail with our integration, it's not just a big paragraph of information. Now it's going to be structured in a way that it has the topic, it has your answers, and we kind of kickstart the experience by giving 4 templates that are just built into the app. It's the activity task, the client review, the phone call, and the Reg BI template for those that want to use it. They do have the ability to customize their own. So that's the big new innovation that we started, and it's made a huge impact for advisors and their workflows.
Absolutely. I implement it with a ton of RIAs. The worst part of the meeting process is documenting what happened in that meeting because there's so much data collection and there's so much information shared when you're working with clients. And so I think the biggest piece that I work with them on in these templates is really separating the nice to know information versus the actionable items. And so, Brian, you guys teamed up with Mobile Assistant, and Redtail has done a lot of work to really turn them to be actionable directly from the dictation tool, correct?
Yeah, it's funny, Corey would probably remember the history of this years and years ago, and I think it was at a Redtail University somewhere in the country, where I told him I wanted that Star Trek, like flip open the tricorder and talk into it and like control Redtail. I want that sci-fi kind of moment of, can you voice drive Redtail? And he went above and beyond. I mean, the integration is phenomenal as far as you can say, do this task, start this workflow, do those type of things, and they can drive that for you automatically. So it's not just getting that note content, which we need for documentation and record keeping, but it automatically applies actionable items if you ask it to. It's voice controlled Redtail through Mobile Assistant. It's awesome. And I think that's a big value to advisors and to their staff, especially because, right, how many staff members get, scribbled notes or a garbled transcription through Siri or something like that? This takes it, cleans it up, make sure you have high quality notes, but the advisor can actually assign something and say, hey, put this out to a customer service person or to an account representative or something like that. Send this off, this task, and then have it come back to me when I'm done. And it's all seamless. So it's an amazing integration. Well done, Corey.
Thanks, Brian.
Great. So Tony, the full circle of this is, as much as there's a dictation tool that syncs directly to the CRM that we love, the client meeting process is sure collecting a lot of planning data and a lot of forward thinking, putting a lot of things in forward motion. Tell us a little bit about what Naviplan is doing to help advisors through that process of data collection and management.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kristen. And when you think about the integration we have with Redtail, it really is that perfect sequence of events, from having the meeting, capturing those notes, creating those action items within Redtail, and then kind of taking them to the next step within Naviplan and the financial planning tool. So it's really interesting how, Brian and I joke all the time about how the CRM is really that epicenter of the client relationship, and data comes in from the great technology of Mobile Assistant, and then it feeds into Naviplan to start creating and developing that plan. And what's exciting about this, this webinar for me and the entire group really, is the concept of meaningful data and how you take action on that data, both in the CRM tool, but also in the planning engine. So Naviplan loves taking that data. The more the data, the better. Obviously, it's a very comprehensive cash flow-based planning tool. But by taking and using meaningful data, the plan becomes, how would you say, more unique to that user or that client or the prospect, which unlocks a great deal of not only opportunity, but it really secures that relationship. So that meaningful integration across the board, from dictation through CRM through planning, that's what's really exciting.
Yeah, I would agree. A lot of times when I'm consulting with clients, we talk a lot about where does data live versus where do I see it? Where is it important to reference it? And Brian, you often talk about that, being that one source of truth for client documentation and client information. But at the same time, I live through with firms every day the struggle of what we call the client meeting. So let's be real, the client meeting is a huge workflow. It's a huge process and a necessary one for fostering that client relationship. But if we really break it down and look at the process of it, right? Corey in his system is part of it. Tony in his system is part of it. But it's most likely being managed in your system and outside systems. We might be scheduling with Calendly or Schedule Once. We might be, utilizing other tools and different mechanics. Tell us how you bring that all together in the CRM.
Yeah, and I think we're doing well not saying hub, something we did talk about as a group the other day, because I think you're right, actually, right? I mean, I want to rethink some of that when I talk about Redtail a little bit as, are we just the hub? And this possibility there's multiple hubs that actually run the business, right? And that makes sense. And I think, to your credit, one of the things that you brought up was that the role that a person plays determines what's their hub. But I would argue that CRM is the source of truth for your contact data and for your business, right? And that's a little different than just a hub. We're kind of that central spot where this is the facts of the client for sure. This is not, we didn't play what ifs or do anything else or modify some data to kind of suit their certain need in a tool. Maybe we're doing some risk management work or the planning or something like that, and we play with all these scenarios. For us, the facts are in the CRM, and then we share that data in and out. Really, it's really bi-directional depending on who we're working with, to make sure that the most accurate and reliable data is in everybody else's sources, whatever their hub is, right? The workflows are so key to this component because, especially for a mid to a larger size firm, you're going to have people with different roles, different duties, responsibilities that they have to take care of. And when we do a client review meeting, you're right, there are maybe 20 things that have to happen, some of them simultaneously, or all have a certain due date that's required. And maybe it's not just one person working on it, maybe it's 5 people or a team And I love the fact that in our workflows, we allow roles and team-based assignments because that allows people to go on vacation and not have the process stop, right? And we've been adding more and more features, actually, things like excluding holidays and weekends, and then we're looking at adding business custom holidays, stuff like that, so that it can automatically skip over certain due dates or reassign appropriately based on somebody else's schedule. So really getting yourself entrenched in how the workflows work. I mean, yeah, is it a pain in the butt in the beginning? Yes. It's workflows take time, but once you perfect it, your business just is on complete autopilot. I mean, it's like putting my Tesla just in auto drive and it just gets me to the destination.
It is, and I think I help firms build workflows, and really what it is it's a cathartic effort of documenting how you do your normal processes, but creating them to be repeatable and adding tools like what Corey and Tony have, so that it brings efficiency to the business, but also documents what you need to document. I think the biggest
Yes.
piece of workflow is reminding people, hey, Mr. Advisor, we need to get those notes from your head into a system so that somebody can run with them and put them in a financial planning tool and put them so that they're relevant and transparent in a client experience, in a client portal. So Tony, I'm going to throw that one to you because you and I have had many discussions and agree. In fact, for my next year's speaking events, my big one on stage is going to be a client portal is not a client experience, because it's just not anymore. And I think anything that we talk about in pandemic, this has proved it, right? Pandemic has proved that a client experience is necessary for transparency. So with that said, anything that's being utilized within the Naviplan system is ultimately there so the client can see and can share that information, whether it's with their loved ones or to just have peace of mind. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I know you guys have done some revamp to the client experience.
Sure. So, great question. And when you think about the client portal, you're absolutely correct. It's not the it's a part of the client experience, right? Especially after what we've just gone through as a country. And what we've done with the portal, and speaking of the portal, we gave it away for the last couple of years for free in response to everything that was going on. And it found a great deal of success. And we made a great deal of enhancements to the portal because we heard what the desires were. And one of the big challenges with the client portal is that oftentimes you find low adoption or struggling adoption because, quite frankly, users and prospects have a great deal of spots where they can access, review their financial data. And in fact, it's all over the place. And so what we found with the client portal is it has to be meaningful in terms of its ability for the client to not only interact, but to feel they're taking part in a plan. And so when you collect meaningful data from, say, Mobile Assistant, and it feeds into Redtail, which creates that plan's then published into the client portal of Naviplan, that's when the client can not only keep making sure they're on track, but really begin to interact with and explore their options of how they can modify their plan to how they see fit. And I'll leave you this bit of an anecdote around the client, right? So what we've done is, and I'm sure you've all heard this before, but there's a spectrum of clients, right? There's really three on the spectrum. There's the do-it-yourself type of client on the one end, which is, say, the left end, and on the right end, you would have your traditional kind of delegator, if you will, and that client delegates things to their advisor. But then there's a great deal of individuals in the middle. In fact, about 85% of the investing public is part of that validator segment. Those are individuals that want validation from the advisor, or they want to validate something that the advisor has done. And this, again, is about 85% of the investing public, and that's how a portal becomes powerful. If you empower users these validators, the ability to do things and seek validation and vice versa. So to your question, it's really important that that portal has meaningful information that is interactive, right? And what you'll see from a Naviplan in the near future is the concept of a truly shared experience where you won't have separate applications with separate user interfaces and separate experiences. It'll be really one kind of cohesive experience that the advisor and the client can interact with if they're across the kitchen table, if they're in a boardroom, if they're on a Zoom call, if they're not fatigued. So really, we're going to kind of unlock that even further because that interaction and that validation is so critical to today's investor.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, when I implement client experiences, it's an entire implementation because I think a firm has to adopt what their vision is, the information that they'd like to share. And also we see a lot of client portals that are focused on different segments of clients, right? I'll use myself as an example. My mom is not a very tech savvy person, God bless her heart. So she needs to see a very simple portal with a couple of squares. I, on the other hand, am tech savvy and would love to see all the nitty gritty. And so my portal experience might be a little different than hers. We're also at different stages in life. So what I see and what she sees might be different in a sense of what brings me value. I have 2 children. One is headed to college in a year and one in 2 years. So I have some college planning to do, and that should be the focus of my experience versus my mom is retired. So we talk a lot about that. Corey, I want to ask you a question about, and Tony's using some really good phrases that are catching for me, which is that meaningful data, right? Anything a client shares with us is meaningful or has some impact, but some of it is actionable, and then some of it is giving us insight to what they need. Okay. Right. Of course, we capture their favorite drink and their dog and all that important stuff that connects us in a relationship, but we also have impactful special dates, things that they're thinking about, life changes, whatever it might be. What I've often done is I have actually taken the financial planning process like Tony is talking about and all of those meaningful pieces, and I've walked backwards and created my templates appropriate to that. Do you want to talk a little bit about how firms are approaching building their templates? Because I think sometimes the idea of it is great, but where do we start? And is that my agenda or is that just an overview?
I love that question because, you know, what we're all 4 of us are talking about today, we're talking about the data and how it's structured. And if it's not structured, it's not going to be meaningful, right? Well, and if it's not meaningful, then what's the advisor losing? They're losing opportunities, right? They're losing action items. You know, so one thing that I learned from Redtail over the years, they put the words to it for me is if it's not in Redtail, it didn't really happen. And they've been saying that for years. And I've really used that a lot as we've talked to advisors, because a lot of advisors understand the need for documentation and the need for detailed documentation. But if you don't have an easy way to capture the information and get it from your short-term memory, right, and get it into text and get it into Redtail, which can kick off the workflow, which can kick off the financial plan opportunities. If you don't have an easy way of doing that, there's so much information that's lost. 2/3 of our short-term memory is gone after an hour. It's crazy to think about it like that, but it's true. And so, that's the one thing we're trying to do is just provide an easy way of structuring the data with the use of templates so that advisors that are using us in these offices are really looking at how do we structure all the information so that it's usable, so it's actionable. And so a lot of times advisors are looking at client meetings as 2 different types of documentation that's needed. One's the memorial of all the information that needs to get put into the notes section of that client record in Redtail. And then the other template, though, is for action items, right? It's for activities in Redtail. Those activities represent things that they want to communicate, the advisor needs to communicate with their team. And so what we're looking at right here is what that structured data looks like. So if you'd used a voice-to-text software solution and you just spoke your notes, first of all, you're gonna have to clean them up because they're gonna be incredibly inaccurate. Second of all, they're not gonna have any structure to them. So what we're looking at on the screen right now is a templated dictation that was transcribed by human transcriptionists all here in the States by mobile assistant. And so that's what the information looks like. So as you can see, it's very clear what's the question, what's the answer, where's the actionable items in this information. So that's really what the templates have allowed us to do as a company, is to help guide the advisor and the offices to help create this structure for the advisors. So it's not this just giant brain dump of information. It's a structured, really formatted, detailed account of that client interaction. It's made a world of difference.
Yeah, I would agree.
I wish we could see how the activities work as well. I don't know if you have a slide for that, but the linked activities with the linked notes, so you have all your content all in one spot, so that if you're like, hey, go ahead and schedule the next meeting, or I had some follow-up questions for them, and you can have like an agenda in there in the activity ready to go, straight
Yeah.
from the advisor's note taking that they might have done in the car or walking through an airport, maybe not walking through an airport anymore these days,
Exactly.
but
And that's
you
actually,
know.
that's one of the features I love about the integration is that the mobile assistant integration that comes over, the dictation that comes over, it doesn't go away once you create something. So I often train users and I say, look, turn this into a note, memorialize it, edit it if you need to, and then turn it into an activity and put only the actionable items as an action item. And so the integration allows you to use that as much as you need to and delete it if necessary or memorialize it in more ways. And that is the functionality that I think users are really looking for to see, you know, dependent upon how it fits for their firm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Tony, let's talk a little bit more about the client experience because I brought up myself as an example and the different experiences, but I also believe that because of the times we're in, there's also an extension of the second generation or other generations that a client experience can reach with these financial plans. So sharing a little bit of more of my story, I live in the Midwest, my mom lives in San Diego, and I'm an only child. So I am her LPOA, and anything that's going on with her and any of her wishes or finances is something that I need to know about. So the idea that she has a client portal, in my mind, isn't even as important as if I have one, right? As that second generation. And her advisor is not mine, and I don't know him well. But I think that extension of reach, you know, utilizing that experience and also the information in it is important. Talk a little bit about reaching that and how Naviplan can kind of help with, you know, next generation or even just reaching more than just it's a plan, what do I do with it?
You know, that's actually an outstanding question, Kristen, because when you think about the client experience, and your first question was kind of alluding to the fact that it's not just a client portal, it's how you interact, it's how you document, it's how you take action on activities, right? So that's all in totality, right? That workflow and that concept is the client experience. When you think about, in particular, what you're suggesting, where you have a parent who's living far away and you not interact with their advisor at all, you know, you hear those stories about advisors who say, well, I'm going to reach out, or I'm going to take that person to lunch, or, you know, my goal is to retain those assets or to continue working with the next generation. Um, Quite frankly, we've seen it. The statistics suggest that it doesn't happen. And that's a lot to do with the fact that what you're suggesting is that the client experience is not extended down to that next generation. It's not being exposed to the next generation. And when you think about the planning practice in particular, not just the portal, but just the creation of the financial plan and the review of that and the revision of that would be to get that next generation, that next of kin involved in the plan to see strategically what you plan on doing with those assets as time goes on. Because that's where, and I keep using the word meaningful, but it's very important. That's where that meaningful interaction happens when in Naviplan you can demonstrate a significant amount of estate planning or other hereditary or, you know, the passing out of assets downward, and you can plan that out and model that out. When you then bring in a generation to show them that or work with your client to do that, that's when you create that relationship and that bond to potentially protect those assets from leaving your business. And so with Naviplan, again, that's where our bread and butter kind of sits in how we manage not only the estate, but the distribution of assets to not only avoid taxes, but also just to do it intelligently with the proper drawdown procedures. Of course, there's RMDs and all that stuff, but really the intelligent way of doing that, but getting that next of kin involved. And that's how Naviplan really kind of shines, but it goes back to your first point. It's all about the client experience. How do you bring them into that conversation? How do you get them engaged? How do you demonstrate your gamma through that planning process to not only satisfy your client, but their next of kin?
Yeah, absolutely. And we could even extend that conversation out towards, you know, third parties that are helping in the plan work itself. Sure. So we also, you know, I highly recommend that even if it, you know, it's funny, Brian, in Redtail, I always ask my clients to create a custom field or a UDF in the system that identifies if they're a portal user or not, right? And
Sure.
if you happen to have a couple of portals, which is happening these days, then maybe you identify. So when a client does call in and they say, I'm locked out, you don't have to say, what are you trying to log into, right? CRM can track that for you. But there does come a point where estate planners, CPAs, anybody else that is a part of the conversation of that planning process might need access. And we're also looking at compliance and security and not wanting to send confidential documents via email. We would also prefer not to have to use a CPA's share file or Dropbox. I know it's happening. I know everybody on the call has had the experience, right? So I think there's also that extension of showing that you know your client experience can be for everyone involved, and there's a transparency that comes around to that. So Brian, tell me a little bit about what's going on with Redtail. We obviously know what's going on in a sense of a lot of integrations, but it's been a rough year for everybody. I think we're all coming out on top. But tell us how your year has been with the company, with your staff. I will say I'm an avid Redtail user, and the puppies on the front login page make my day, so thank you. And so tell me what you've got going on and what's cooking.
Oh, wow. Do we have enough time for all that? It's been, what, almost 14 months since Redtail did the trial run of work from home, and it became that way as like a permanent. There are a lot of moving parts around here. I'm actually in my office in Sacramento today, me with 4 people, I think, in 30,000 square feet. And I feel like this is the new norm. And we've done a lot around health and wellness. I think that's very important. I think advisors really should be investing in health and wellness for their clients and the clients' families. That's going to be vital. I think a lot of people have siloed themselves a little bit. And so there's some trauma that's happened over the last year, right? We went from trauma of apocalyptic end of the world. It's like a movie that's all coming to an end 14 months ago, to the apocalyptic trauma of, what do you mean I have to go like with everybody to the restaurant? Like, yeah, now I get back to the real world. Like, there's a lot going on that front. What we've been really excited about, though, is it's given us a chance to reflect on how our culture is actually built, how our culture is actually delivered to people now in this remote world. We're going to obviously change into a hybrid model. I think everybody's going to get that way. And tools like us and others are a fantastic solution for them to stay in touch with the clients, with their staff, and all of that in real time. One of the things that we saw a big explosion on was Redtail Speak, which is our client text messaging solution. We had a massive explosion on that front because we had Zoom fatigue. We had that for a while. Probably still have it, I guess, but I think it's getting a little bit better for some people. But we had Zoom fatigue where it's like, I just want to communicate and talk real quick about something. I don't need a big old meeting anymore, right? Or my hours of working are totally different now, right? Maybe I'm a night owl. This has been great for me. Let me shift everything to later on the day starting time. And so I'm more available in the evening. Well, I might not be in my office on my laptop working and talking to people. So being able to text and do that as we text all of our friends and family is huge. And we saw a huge boom on that front. But I could go on and on. We've done so many things. I mean, I am definitely one of the people that's taken advantage of, let's see, comedy night, trivia nights, happy hours, beer making, educational content, wellness content. I think I've done it all through Zoom this year.
Yeah.
It's a little, take a breather, right? Right now, I am trying to force employees on vacation is where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I think that's been a shift for everybody. Many of us, including, and myself included, I run my business from my office, obviously. And so I didn't have as much of a shift as much as I did working with my advisors who needed to shift in how they foster their relationships, which seemed a lot more difficult than I think we thought it would be. I always say, as a consultant, and you guys can probably relate, a lot of what I do is not able to be delivered via Amazon Prime in 2 days. It's not tangible. And that's where there's a lot of similarities in what advisors and planners are doing, is that the advice we give is the value we offer. But a lot of that advice is through fostering the relationship of going golfing and having them come in and asking them how their dog is and how their grandkids are. And when you remove that and it does seem a little impersonal, I think it's tools like these that really advisors have begun to leverage in order to show some of that value, right? Because that's what we always struggle with in this industry, is showing our value, not just talking about it. So
Well, let me interrupt you real quick.
Yeah.
I apologize for interrupting because I want to interject right there for the other great gentleman to speak about this. Is I think that because of the going full remote, we can't see each other, can't do the wine tastings, can't do all the type of stuff. Give it actually an opportunity for advisors to step up their game and become even more connected than ever before. Something I've done myself with my employees, which I can kind of treat as my clients, I guess we could say that, is just spontaneous outreach, not for the purpose of work, for the purpose of checking in. How are you? How's the family? Any big changes going on? This isn't a, oh, I hope you have all your documents prepared type call. This isn't, I'm not even going to tell you what your account balances are. I just want to say hi. And it's spontaneous. And I have been like, I'll just randomly FaceTime one of my employees. Yeah, or I've even FaceTime clients. I'll just be like, hey, dial the number and see if they answer. And they're like, what's going on? What's going on? I'm like, nothing scary. I just want to say, hey,
Right.
we're all in this together.
Right.
And that goes a long, long way.
Yeah, no, I love it. And Corey and Tony, you can relate to this, what I'm going to say, and that is, Ryan, you have the luxury of being in sunny places most of the time, but Corey, Tony, and I are all located in the Wisconsin area.
Yep.
And so we get summer for about 30 days a year. And with that comes weather fatigue plus Zoom fatigue plus everything else. So Corey and Tony, I'll leave it to you guys. Why don't tell us a little bit about what you're doing? Because Corey, I know you and Tony both have some really amazing culture in the companies that's driving what you're doing.
Yeah, Tony. I'll just hop in for a second and tell this story because it's piggybacking on what Brian you just brought up, which is, at the beginning of this whole pandemic, we saw an incredible spike in the number of meetings, right, that our clients were having. And then most of them were phone calls, right, because people were not sure if they should be traveling. I guess what I'd say about that is I wish that advisors would keep that in mind, that shouldn't be a short-term thing. I mean, they're checking in on their clients. That's what they're doing. Times are tough. Things are kind of crazy. Nobody really knows what's going on. Hey, I better check in with my clients, make sure they're doing okay. Okay, it's not to talk about moving money here or there. It's literally to check in to say, hey, just a quick phone call to say, hey, I'm here with you. We're in it together. I might not be able to see you right now, but we're gonna get through this. I think that's a really great lesson to be learned from this whole experience. Is now that we're getting to a more of a new, different type of normal, that's a great thing to remember, that there's never a bad time to just pick up the phone and call your client and check in with them, and then leave a quick, make sure to get it into Redtail, that you've had that touch, because that additional empathy, I think that's what the word you use, Tony, when you're meeting with clients, the best way to do that is to connect with them. And so using technology, like whether it's a service like ours or whatever it is, or getting on more virtual calls, just being flexible with clients and understanding that everybody might not want to meet in person anymore. This might be a permanent kind of situation, but it doesn't have to prevent you from connecting with your clients. So I just want to piggyback on what you just said, Brian, when it came to that. I thought that was a good point.
I want to answer your question in two ways, Kristen, but first I want to just acknowledge Brian for his success with Redtail in the work from home front, because I mean, if you just Google that, Brian from Redtail, and you kind of look, he's covered in a great deal of articles. The exposés are on how you've created that culture, your Takeout Tuesdays, all that. I think it was Takeout. Is it Takeout Thursdays?
Yep.
Takeout.
Takeout Tuesday.
Just
so Thursday.
Really well done. I think it was brilliant, and you reacted very well. So I want to just kind of throw that kudos out there to you.
Thank you,
And we look to you as an example, quite frankly. We stole some of your ideas. I made them my own, though, so no one knows they're your idea. They're all Tony's idea. So I wanted to answer this in two parts. I wanted to talk about the company and then kind of what we've seen from the advisor space. So in terms of Naviplan over the last year, it's funny, Kristen, because last year, in February, you were presenting, if you remember, to our entire company. With, I think, Dennis Gallant and Josh Brown and Michael Batnick. That was just 14 months ago that
Crazy.
we had an all-company meeting at the Harley-Davidson Museum, and then within 2 months, the world turned upside down. And we responded very well. Our CEO Angela, she did a fantastic job of kind of turning us around, getting us ready for work from home, and doing those cultural things that helped advance our employees. But I think Brian makes another good point about forcing vacations. We've seen a bit of that challenge where individuals are kind of working more, quite frankly, because they can get out of bed and take a few steps towards their home office. And so we've tried our hardest to make sure our employees are working, a moderate amount of time and taking time for themselves. In terms of our answer to the market, and I mentioned this before, we gave away the client portal. We gave it away for free. We said any new user. In fact, when we first did this, we announced this. We actually sent rebate checks to customers that paid for the client portal. We said, you know what? It's free. Anyone can have it for free 2 years, no strings attached. And we thought we were just trying to help. And we saw hundreds, almost, if not thousands of advisors take advantage of that opportunity, and tens of thousands of clients being exposed to their plan digitally. And we thought that was just our way to answering the call for the industry. And quite frankly, they've been very grateful. And to Corey's point about the activity levels, we published data last year. We ran, we generate, I don't know, 6 million plans a year out of Naviplan, and we looked at all the data, and we saw a significant drop in new client creation in the first 6 months of the pandemic year of 2020. So we saw a significant slowdown in new plan creation. But we saw, I think it was almost double the normal activity levels of plan revisions, is advisors revising plans. And so that brought a great deal of hope and enthusiasm to everyone at Naviplan, because we saw advisors stepping up and getting together with their clients and saying, this is okay, we're going to get through this, let's make those revisions. And I think that was just really inspiring, because not only did the advisors take all that action, but then those clients were also saying, I'm not going to get caught in a situation like this again. I need to plan better. So I think the whole world, hopefully the whole world, has really changed the way they've thought about advice. And we've seen that now. So the lagging indicator, so that indicator of all the plan revisions, we're now starting to see new plan creation increase significantly, where new clients and prospects are jumping in and saying, we need an advisor, we need to get a plan, we believe in that power now. So that's also exciting as well too for advisors, which is what this whole shifting tides is about. It's about the oncoming influx of prospects from the entire wealth spectrum, right? Not just your bread and butter clients, but the entire wealth spectrum that are going to seek out advice. And how can you technologically manage that workflow from meeting, discovery, dictation, documentation, activity, and then taking that activity into a plan. So, I mean, it's been rather disruptive and saddening, right? Because, I mean, obviously this has been a challenge for all of us, but it's also enlightening to see that we're going to come out of this, like you said, on top, Kristen, but really stronger as an industry, not only technologically, but how we provide advice and how we're going to impact positively the lives of clients and prospects as they seek out advice from advisors.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I will say that with the firms that I interact with and that I work with, what we're starting to see is it's not as easy as just talking about the plan anymore.
Yeah.
And I'll explain that from my perspective and leave it open to you guys to maybe comment. I think that the plan seemed like something that we needed to do because we had to have that something tangible to deliver, because it showed our value. But I think if we were to ask all the advisors in the room, does that plan reflect the work you've done on this relationship? The answer would be no, which is why the software, the interaction, and the documentation of the interaction with the three of you here is really important. I've also seen in the past year, one of the trends I've seen is the plan isn't necessarily as concrete as we thought it was. Let's just roll with it. Even in my family situation, with my mother being out of state, with California being as locked down as ever, and we had a number of family members not fare well in pandemics. So we actually had 3 different plans in our family, depending upon what might happen and how we were all going to manage that, who would be involved, who wouldn't be involved, who wanted to take the lead. Yes, I'm an only child, but I'm Italian. That should say it all. So, so with that, I think that we're starting to see a lot more scenario-driven conversation rather than I'd like to retire at this age and I'd like to get the kids out of the house at this age and ta-da. There's no more ta-da. And I think the world has shown that to us. Tell me a little bit about what you're seeing about advisors being a little bit more adept to change, and also where they might be having some scenario-driven processes in their, in their firms.
Well, I'll go first on that. And we did a prep call yesterday, and I told you guys I was going to use this analogy, whether you liked it or not, right? So I'm going
Here
to
it
use
comes.
it, right? Here it comes. And now I've built it up, so now if it's terrible, it's even worse. But, I look at the planning process between Mobile Assistant, Redtail, and Naviplan as like baking a cake. And baker is the advisor, and the client, you're making that cake. So during that discovery process and that dictation process, you're learning what your client wants, what they enjoy, what kind of cake they like. Is it chocolate? Is it strawberry, frosting, whatever? And that's all documented and brought into Redtail, right? And Redtail is kind of the bakery, right? They're the ones that produce the cake. They create the activity items. They make sure everything's on track. And then the delivery of the cake finally is kind of that financial plan, right? And this is the kind of giving it back to the client. And the reason why I like that analogy is because it really shows that entire process about understanding the client, understanding what happened. And then, Corey, one of the things that came out of the pandemic that I failed to mention is the Planning Desk podcast. I have to do a
Yes.
pitch for that. All of you will be guests. Kristen, you're next. Brian's right after that. Corey just went. And we talked about this, though. We talked about when you're across the table or across a Zoom call and you are the advisor and you're trying to be empathetic and trying to listen in light of all that's happened in the last year. You need to truly you need to be there empathetically with them. And so taking notes, you need to be kind of cautious with how you take notes and how do you interact, right? So to answer your question very quickly, because I've already talked for 3 minutes, it's truly understanding the concerns and the desires of the client to make sure that meaningful data is then brought into Redtail and then taking action upon within a financial plan. Because you can learn a great deal around a client's concerns when you're talking to them and interacting with them. Like Brian said, just a random phone call. How are you doing? How are you feeling? How's it going? Is there anything you're worried about? Because those data points, right, they might be not really quantifiable or not really an action item. They allow you to craft a meaningful plan, a meaningful client experience, and ultimately a financial plan that will suit their emotional and their desires, right? So the emotional or the intrinsic desires that they have. So I think that's how we need to change, right? It's not dollars and cents anymore. It's about, man, this really impacted me differently. I want to think differently about this. And I think advisors were going to stand up to that. They're going to handle that very well because technology will allow them to do that. But also they're learning that the client needs a lot more than just dollars and cents and a plan. Because like you said, Kristen, plans are only as good as the actions taken after them, right? And oftentimes actions weren't taken. So the next generation of advice is taking that plan and turning it into the action for the client.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Kristen.
No, go right ahead, Corey. What's happening on your side in a sense of seeing some influxes or changes? I know you mentioned that you're seeing a lot, you saw an increase because there's a lot of phone calls that are happening.
Yeah.
I've also seen a lot more templates on your side created, and we're getting a little bit creative. The traditional, quarterly client meeting or annual client meeting templates, we're all doing those and we get it. But as Brian and Tony are referencing, the quick check-in template of just 2 questions that we ask and what their answers were, or how are you feeling template to document, right? To remember to ask those questions, I think are important.
That's a great idea for a new default template, the feeling template. I love it, but it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I love the baking and the cake analogy. It's awesome. One of the things that we thought.
Sprinkle some stuff on there.
You get the hat. Yes.
So I'm going to take it a little different route, which is in a little different perspective, which is even though the client is so incredibly important for advisors, and it's so important that they're connecting, what I think that advisors learned in this last year especially was that it's not just about the client though, and it's not just about them. It's about the team that the advisor is working with. And if they didn't have a way of communicating those next steps, action items, like you just said, Tony, it's amazing how many things were getting kind of slipping through the cracks, right? That should have been part of the plan that didn't get captured, right? And so that's one of the things that I think advisors are being smarter about, and they're understanding is that they have to have a workflow and a process in place that not only is going to get the opportunities from the information from those client interactions, but they've got to have a way of communicating what those next steps are with their teams. And because all of a sudden you think about the environment the advisors are in, it's not just that they couldn't meet with their clients anymore. Well, if they have an assistant that they're working with on a daily basis, right, that they're coming into the office and communicating those next steps, well, they can't do that anymore. You know, most of them are working out of their homes. And so having the technology in place that makes that easy, that communication easy, so that those opportunities don't slip through the cracks. That's where I think the leveraging technology around them, advisors are they're getting much smarter about the fact that it's not just about them. If they want to make this client experience really, really meaningful, it's got to be the team behind them that is going to help make it really blow it out of the park for them. So that's one of the shifts that we kind of saw a little bit, is the workflow and process shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're speaking my language, because when I work with firms, I do executive strategy on tech and how can we use tech the best. We're looking at the entire tech stack, and it's you guys and many others that are kind of rounding out, that piece of the puzzle. I think the other piece though is I'm also working with the operations staff and the people who are truly boots on the ground managing all of this data, or if we're being honest, managing the people, the owners, the advisors who have all the information in their heads. Okay, and the biggest request I get from all these firms that I work with is from the client service managers to the operation managers, anybody who's taking in that information. If I could just tap into his head and get everything out, it would be so much easier, right? I wouldn't get 5 emails randomly thinking things. And Brian, I'm gonna tie you in here, because I have advisors very often who use Speak and also use Mobile Assistant. Okay. And so they're using Speak possibly to do the text communication with clients and utilize a lot of those different features. What sometimes happens, and I know this is crazy, but this is day in the life, right? You're talking into your mobile assistant app and you realize you forgot to tell your client something. Okay, so you could literally run all of these processes we're talking about right now on a phone if you had to. Not saying you want to, but you can. And as we talk about being transparent and also being mobile, all right, I'm trying to bring all of my clients a little bit more positive, right? Yes, we're working from home, but sooner or later, you can also work on the beach in a home that you rent. You can work wherever you need to, and you've created your business to be mobile, even if that's a little lonely being that way, right? It's just your family moving with you. And so I think the leveraging of some of the tools that you have built into Redtail and allowing Mobile Assistant to be that app and that template, and Tony, having that client experience being mobile ready, it's all right there, no matter how anybody wants to consume it. Talk to me a little bit about the mobile capabilities that you guys have done. Brian, I also know your app got an update a little while ago, which is nice.
Yeah, I think about almost a year ago. Can you believe that? We did our updates, and now we're on a cycle of monthly updates and releases. Because you can control almost everything on the mobile app now, or a lot of it. You can't really do a lot of administration, but most people aren't doing that. When we built those out, we looked and said, anybody actually using like the settings? No, they just want the settings from the CRM desktop in there. But the mobile is not just mobile app, it's laptops like I'm on here and all this, but we were preaching forever, work where you want. Go figure, 14 months ago, that became true. That was awesome. And everybody was doing just that, working wherever they want. And when you have all these tools at your disposal that are mobile or online, and you don't have to have this certain equipment or anything like that, you can just kind of log into a website and work. Yeah, you can do it anywhere. Because one of the things I noticed is that, and I kind of mentioned it with me being a night owl, is pandemic has allowed the people that are remote now to shift to a best work schedule for them. right? And so I know advisors and their staff are going to do the same thing. If we can adapt a little bit, because even their clients might be, I mean, heck, if I'm your client and now you know I'm a night owl, I might be the last person on your list to call, right? Because you know I'm up anyways. I'm good to go. I can have that conversation versus somebody else who's like, ready to go at 5 o'clock in the morning, and fired up, and their day ends at 2. Don't bother them after 2. Those are all things that we keep inside the CRM and keep awareness of and help us schedule our days. The other thing I wanted to touch on too briefly was we have this huge, I mean, we're basically living now another great migration. And if you were an advisor in Iowa working with people who own farms and ranches and stuff like that, you may very well have a client walk in your door who works for Facebook and they moved home and they are very tech savvy, more tech savvy than any of your clients ever have been. And you're going to want to work with them, and we're seeing that shift nationwide of people coming out of the big cities and going rural. So you rural folks, we got to get the A game up. We got to, make sure we're prepped to do this, not the old way it was done before.
That's interesting, Brian. And actually, we talked about this on the planning desk, another shameless plug, about, when someone relocates. So, for instance, we saw an influx, and you've seen this, Brian, from California to Idaho and Texas.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to educate and talk to the advisor to tell them, to make sure they explain to their clients that I'm not your advisor because we are both California residents. I'm your advisor because of X, Y, and Z. So as much as the Facebook engineer that moves to Idaho that seeks out a new advisor, the same holds true to protect them. Your digital experience protects them, but you must remind them, again, we're not doing this because we're friends. Well, we should be friends by now, but we're not doing this because we're California residents. We're doing this because of X, Y, and Z. So that's so critical, coupled with, of course, that client experience.
Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You guys know me well enough for many years that I'm very much tell it like it is. And when I am starting to work with firms, a lot of times the first thing that comes out, and I'm going to smile respectfully, they say, well, we're different than everybody else. we do things different enough, right? We've all heard it.
Right.
And I tend to correct that statement and say, the way that you have formed relationships with your clients is like no one else can. That is why your clients are with you today. That is why they will stick with you. And that's why more clients will meet with you in the future. But how you do what you do is not very unique. And by the way, it doesn't need to be. Hundreds of thousands of people use Redtail in all of your systems. You do not need to reinvent the wheel. In fact, that's why the 3 of you are here. You've done that for everybody already. So the idea is tap into what is there in a sense of efficiencies, whether it's for your staff or for yourself or a joint venture, right? Corey, you're solving the problem for, getting those mental notes out. It's ultimately helping that client service person, and it's also helping the client's story to be saved in Redtail. Tony, you're really connecting the dots from the plan to the transparency and putting it in the client's fingertips. But it's okay that everybody's doing that, because the value and the uniqueness is in the relationship. And you're right, we've had to rethink how that relationship is happening. And it isn't just, for our case, Brian, you're the odd man out here, but it isn't just everybody in Milwaukee. It's just not anymore. And that's not even the excuse, right? Brian, you need to come to Milwaukee soon for sure, once it gets warm. But it's all about, it opens the doors. It opens the doors to your clients do not need to be here. We've proven that wrong in the past 14 months. And Brian, I think you're right. It's opening the doors to a new segment of clients, right? You tend to service the same type of people or scenarios that surround you. And suddenly, yes, the tech savvy client might not be a common client. And it's something that you can change a service model for and change how you manage data collecting, documenting meetings, and what those meetings are about.
Well, Kristen, sorry, Brian. You hit on something that I think is really important. And this is something that Tony and I on his podcast actually talked about, which I think is incredibly important for advisors to hear, which is like for advisors that aren't sure how to get started, or they understand that dictation can help them, that a financial planning software would be really helpful, CRM is important, but they're really, how do you get started? How do you learn the best practices and the best way to use it? the thing I want advisors to hear is you leverage the companies that you're using. So like Mobile Assistant has a team of professional experts that are just waiting for them to schedule a demo. Okay, I know Redtail has the same thing with your customer service, Naviplan with Advicent. So that's where I would say the help is there. Like if you're looking to use a dictation service, you don't have to try to figure this all out on your own and how to best, get the integration working with Redtail. You get on the phone and get on a demo for a half an hour with any one of our companies, and we're going to help you get kickstarted and save you an enormous amount of time. So leverage that knowledge that companies like ours have got into place, because that's what we're here for. We want you to be successful. We want you to be successful with the integrations we've worked so hard on. So I just wanted to make that point because I think that's a good one.
It's a really good point. And I also tell my firms to come prepared. So you will get the generic overview of any technology being shown to you if you just let them show you generically what it's all about. That's their job. But if you come prepared and say, I would like you to show me how other firms are managing their client meeting process, right? Or I think we also need firms to start being a little bit more transparent of where they're hurting. I always say you don't work with the consultants until you're hurting enough. We don't reach out to support of your companies until we're hurting enough. And so you need to say where you're hurting, right? That doesn't mean you're complaining. It's I'm stuck here. And I know I'm not the only one who's gotten stuck here. I guarantee you somebody else figured it out. Can you share the wealth? And I think that's where we need to kind of, make another step. Tony, with your software, it's a little bit different because there are customizations and there are approaches to managing it. But do you see that you need that input from the client to foster that conversation to the next level?
No, and Corey and Kristen, you both bring up fantastic points. We do have a customer success team for that very reason. But Kristen, it's very prescient what you said. If you go into a demo without providing any feedback, right, you're going to get a generic response. So we actually encourage users and prospects to bring us use cases, bring us scenarios and say, how does Naviplan do this? So we can show you very specifically, because if you have a niche-based advice approach, or you have very particular, ways you provide advice, we can highly configure the application to follow that workflow, but also it shows you how we get to a certain point. So that's a great point, Kristen. Whenever you demo software, whenever you're considering software, or whenever you're struggling with software, make sure you have that use case or that example, because that allows not only the software to demonstrate that it's the right fit for you, but it shows you that result, so then you have confidence in the application when you start to use it with your clients.
Yeah, you're right. I always give the quick threes, right? The three things I love about what I'm doing today that I don't want to change, and the three things that drive me crazy
I love that.
that I
That's
need
great.
to solve for. And then I know you guys can definitely run with it and your people can, and bringing value to that. We have just a couple minutes left. Contact information is listed below to reach any of us beyond this webinar. Closing remarks from anybody? How we doing? We did it. Full hour on best practice, process, workflow. I mean, all the good.
Literally, so in closing comments, I literally want to do this again soon, because we didn't touch on teams-based advice as much as I think we should have, because
Nope.
Corey, you've done some amazing things there. Redtail does some amazing things there. Naviplan does amazing things in teams-based advice, because like you said, Brian, if someone's on the golf course or someone's on vacation, like, don't miss a beat, especially in this new normal.
Yeah, your business needs to keep running. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
So
and that's how you should set it up.
It deserves to. Everybody deserves to have a day off. Your business
right.
keeps
Yeah.
running.
Right.
Planning
No,
for that
this was fun. This was so much fun. Thank you all. I mean, thank you,
Thank
for
you.
doing this, Kristen, and
Yeah.
managing the three of us. But Corey, this was a great idea. Thank you for the audience members. This was a lot of fun for me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, this was great. Well, thank you again to everybody. And hopefully next time we see each other, it's in person. All right.
Hopefully.
Wait, does that mean I have to come to Wisconsin?
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
You're outvoted,
All right,
Brian.
fine.
Sorry.
All right, I'm coming.
So much fun.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. This is great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.